Well, a week ago, I interviewed two former angling stars who quit the England women's team over a transgender teammate they thought had an unfair advantage. The Sports International Governing Body has now ruled that male-born competitors cannot take on women because their physical power gives them an unfair advantage. So some common sense, again, prevailing in the world of women's sport. But the fight continues in many other women's sports. Canadian powerlifter April Hutchinson has taken a stand against trans women in her sport, facing a backlash for doing so. Well, now a video has emerged of her rival, Anne Andres, a male-to-female trans athlete who holds the women's record in Canada, appearing to mock women for being weak.
Why is women's bench so bad? I mean, not compared to me. We all know that I'm a tranny freak, so that doesn't count. And no, we're not talking about Mackenzie Lee. She's got little T-Rex arms and she's like 400 pounds of chest muscle, apparently. I mean, standard bench in powerlifting competition for women, I literally don't understand why it's so bad.
Well, Team Canada powerlifter April Hutchinson joins me now. Well, welcome to Piers Morgan Says. Thank you for coming into the studio. Anne Andres, who is a biological male who's transgendered, currently holds 4 of the 5 provincial records, the highest deadlift of all ages in Canada. If Anne Andres competed with males, then she would place around 6,000. Right there is the inequality, the unfairness that we're seeing in many sports, but particularly a sport like yours.
Yeah, so you have powerlifting, which is a pure strength sport. Males have an advantage of 60 to 70% advantage over females. You hear Anne talking about the bench press. Why is bench press so weak for females? We're not designed for bench press. We don't have the right muscle mass for bench press, so therefore we will be weaker.
When you hear her mocking, really, the whole situation, how does that make you feel?
I mean, it's the whole thing is disgusting. It's disgraceful. It's disheartening. It's even more disheartening that the Federation allows this to happen. I am the one being punished for speaking truth, yet he can mock females and say, you know, call me a bigot, incite hate, and nothing's being done about that. But I'm the one being silenced by my Federation.
What is going to happen to you?
Well, most recently, I've been threatened with suspension. 2 weeks ago, I received a letter from my Federation stating that you cannot call Anne a biological male. That goes against the Code of Ethics. You know, because in their policy, they do ask that we use pronouns. They don't force you to, but they ask. Also,
But she is a biological male. I mean, I'm perfectly prepared to call her Anne, her name that she'd prefer to be called. That's fine. But she's a biological male, a transgender athlete who's now destroying female competitors in women's sport. I mean, to me, again, but particularly in this powerlifting, it's so obvious that if someone would come 6,000 competing against men, but is winning against women, there's the problem.
Exactly. Now, just recently, the Strongman Corporation in Canada, we spoke out against, they had a transgender athlete. They actually changed their policy to create a separate category.
Right.
So simple. And that's all we've been asking is for a separate category.
To me, it's very simple. What should happen is you either compete against your biological sex. So if you're a trans woman, you would compete against biological males, as most of them have done before in sport, massively less successfully, it should be noted, or you have a completely new category.
Easy peasy. Yeah, you'd think it'd be that easy. But
yes, and because there are far more people now identifying as men or women, different to their biological sex, these categories would be quite well, I would imagine, well stocked with people, right? There'd be lots of people wanting to do it.
No, exactly. Yeah. Well, my Federation actually, I think they've gone rogue. They've done their own thing. They've created an inclusion policy. So you could identify as a female tomorrow up here, take all the records, crush it in the women's category, and then go back to being a man the next day.
That's something Martina Navratilova said very early on, and she was accused of being a bigot. One of the biggest LGBTQ advocates probably ever in sport. She was accused of being bigoted. I mean, this is the sort of I don't know what you would call it, but it's the instant reaction. Every time anyone in your position, or Martina or whatever, they raise a concern about this obvious unfairness. In fact, I would call it cheating. I mean, it's cheating. Yes. To me, it has the same effect as doping, right? In the sense it gives somebody an unfair advantage. We all know this, but people like you, brave enough to put your head over the parapet, you get shot down and called bigoted, transphobic, and so on.
Well, exactly. I mean, I've been called that word I don't know how many times now. It's not transphobic to ask for fairness in women's sports.
Right.
It's a word they use to silence you. Well, I'm not going to be
Do
silenced.
you have any problem with transgender people?
No, not at all. Not at all. I have a problem with transgender athletes going into women's sports,
Yeah.
or AKA biological men,
Yeah.
taking women's podium spots, sponsors, medals.
And you never see it the other way around with
Never.
trans men.
Exactly, never.
It doesn't happen because trans men actually have an inferior disadvantage when they compete against biological men.
No,
Obviously,
exactly.
because they're biological females. So there's a reason, I always say, there's a reason the Olympics, you split the genders up. If you
Yes.
didn't, if you made it gender neutral, the next Olympics, women would win about 2 gold medals, if they were lucky, in the entire tournament.
Well, there's a reason why there's categories. I'm in the Masters, so I compete between 40 and 50 years old.
Yeah.
There's people from 50 to 60. There's juniors. Like, I could identify as a junior tomorrow and go crush the juniors.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
so-
And if you had to compete in your category of 40 to 50 Masters against only biological males who identified now as women but had competed in powerlifting in that category, how would you get on?
Oh, well, I think the answer's for itself, not well. So,
I mean, you wouldn't win anything, right?
no, nothing.
So your chances of being able to be successful in your sport are massively eroded simply because people with an unfair physical advantage have come along and decided they want to be you.
Exactly. And this particular person, Anne, I mean, he's taken records that basically people that have been training for 10 years haven't even touched a number. Like a deadlift of 573 pounds is unheard of, especially by a 40-year-old.
Are you going to sue the federation?
Well, I do have an attorney that's in the works right now. I do have to respond to their letter of disciplinary, but it is in the works, yes. And I'm actually raising money right now for legal fees to pay the lawyers.
I think it is ridiculous that people like you are put through this hell for spelling out the bleeding obvious. I do
Yes.
think it's ridiculous. And we keep hammering this on this program because I think most right-minded people know how ridiculous it is and how unfair it is. But thank you for coming in. I wish you good luck. And we will keep hammering this drum until common sense prevails in every sport.
Yes, for sure. And I just want to give you this as a gift because it is Women's History Month in Canada.
Ah,
So I made this shirt for you.
keep female sports
So
female.
let's make this global as well.
You know what? I will happily endorse that T-shirt because they should be. And women's rights to fairness and equality should trump stupid allegations of being transphobic. I have no problem with any trans people. I wish them all the very best. I want them to have fairness and equality in their lives, absolutely, but not when it erodes women's rights to fairness and equality. That is just unfair and unequal. Thanks for coming in.
Exactly.